I'm going to start the webinar to allow folks in. So just give me a second here. We are streaming and
I think we'll wait for another minute just to see if Cindy is going to be able to get on.
Cindy has no internet, but she's trying to call in.
Oh.
Okay.
Mhm.
okay, I'll see if she's in the list here to move forward. We've got, oops, we have the attendees coming in now. So, okay, I don't see Cindy's number on there yet. So. Oh. Nikki, do you know if Cindy's number starts with 583?
Yes, it does.
Is this you, Cindy? Okay, I'm going to move her over.
Yeah, Cindy was in, but seems to be gone again.
Sorry, I'm just still trying to get, it's not giving me the option for Cindy's phone number to move her over. All I can do is either rename her or remove her, which is odd. Hang on. Cindy, can you hear us? Cindy Kelsey, you're muted. Can you unmute and let us know if you can hear us?
Oh, the joys of technology.
We've been having problems here at ours, so it may cause some difficulties.
In-person meeting, next county council meeting. I'm looking forward to it.
Yes.
Cindy, can you hear us? I've moved you over. If you can unmute your phone.
She says she's in and she can hear us, but we can't hear her.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, it shows that she's muted on our
Okay,
screen.
so maybe we'll go ahead, Cindy, and you could try to work with Cindy to get her to the point where she can speak. Does that work?
I'll do my best. It's hard multitasking.
I bet. Okay. Okay, I'm going to call the meeting to order. It is 4:03, and the first item is approval of the agenda. I have a motion moved by Nikki and seconded by Sherry that the rules of procedure order be suspended to move the presentation from Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority up in the agenda to follow number 6 deferred items. And further, that the agenda for the regular council meeting held on June the 8th, 2021 be approved as presented. Are there any amendments, Kathy?
None.
Okay, so as presented. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, can we change the screen? I've got Kathy large at the bottom and everyone else little.
I'm wondering if you just need to change your view on your screen to the
Okay,
gallery view.
let me try. Yeah, let me try. Yeah, that's better. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in general nature thereof by any member of council on any item on tonight's agenda? Seeing none, we'll note that in the minutes. And next, I have a motion moved by Tom and seconded by Brent that the minutes of the regular council meeting held May 25th, 2021 be approved as presented. Any questions or comments on the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor? Carried. On a meeting. Okay, mayor's remarks. I was a grandson in the background there. Today is 1 year, actually it was yesterday, 1 year since the Parham fire. And it's certainly with heavy hearts that people on Facebook are talking about and showing pictures of the church burning down. It's not a great week when we talk about that anniversary and the Muslim family that was killed in London, wiped out by a vehicle. Just so sad. And of course, then we have the 215 Indigenous children that were found in Kamloops, or the grave site anyway. So very emotional and sad week for Ontario and for Canada. It's the only good news this week is that today our numbers of COVID-19 are lower than they've been since September. We are below the 500 mark, and we are now at 62% of Ontario that have been vaccinated. So we're slowly getting there. It's coming together, but certainly some crazy times right now. Does anyone else have anything to add? Deputy Mayor Gowdy? Does any member of council have anything to add? Okay, we'll move on then to, there's no deferred items.
No.
We will move to the presentation by Sally McIntyre, Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority. Welcome, Sally.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for allowing me to present to you today. I thought before I got into the presentation, I'd just give you an update on the watershed, because I know that people are seeing lower than average levels, and we've heard a lot of questions and concerns about that. So I thought I would just start with a 2-minute update for you on that. So the bottom line is that we had record low precipitation and record high temperatures in the month of May. And consequently, across the watershed, water levels are low. We were able to capture and hold flows in the upper watershed, because what we retain in those reservoirs in the spring is what allows us to maintain a base flow in the Mississippi River throughout the summer months. So what you'll see is in areas where we don't have the ability to release flows, like right now, all that reservoir capacity is being held for us to do a slow release over the summer months. So anything downstream of those reservoirs are seeing a significant drop. So we're at 35% of normal levels at Ferguson Falls and at Appleton, which are two sort of major indicator areas we use on the watershed to see how we're doing. And we're at 30% or less on some of the tributaries like the Fall River, the Clyde, Indian, and the Carp Rivers. So across the river, the watersheds, we're seeing much lower levels. So our goal will be to try to maintain as much of the flow in those reservoirs and just do a slow, constant release as needed over the summer months to ensure maintenance of base flows. Beyond that, we're very much, all of us, at the behest, so to speak, of Mother Nature, in terms of we constantly lose stuff in the reservoir simply due to evaporation. So days like today are just, that water we're losing at a tremendous rate. So we really need rain. So my message to everybody is pray for rain. Please share with your residents that we have held back capacity, and the reason why we're not releasing it is because we need to be very judicious in how we release it to ensure that we have downstream flows throughout the summer months. One other benchmark I want to share with you is that Crotch Lake, we almost were able to fill this spring, but it's about 1/3 of a meter below where we would like to have it at this time, which in the scheme of things isn't really that bad. So we have the capacity there. We just have to be very judicious in how we release it. So that's the update on the state of watershed. Any questions about that before I move into the formal presentation? Nope. Okay, so I will happily share my screen then. Let me go back to here, share screen. Okie doke. Can I see a thumbs up from people if you can see that all right? Wonderful. Okay, so thank you very much. So here is our jurisdiction, the Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority. Just a quick reminder, we're responsible not just for the Mississippi Valley, but also the Carp River and those portions that drain directly into the Ottawa River. So it's a significant jurisdiction covering many, many square kilometers of area. In terms of the profile, I always like to remind people that we drop approximately 250 meters over 200 kilometers. And just by way of comparison, Niagara Falls is roughly 50 meters of drop. So the drop we have in our watershed is significant. And that's why in the spring during the freshet, that water is coming because there's a lot of elevation change that's coming. But by the same token, we're constrained by how much we can hold it back in terms of the reservoir capacity built into the system. So the Mississippi River Watershed Plan, we're coming down the home stretch here. I presented to you on this, I think, late last year. And the goal of the plan is to provide us, all of our member municipalities and the residents and businesses in the watershed, a common and broad understanding of what's happening in the watershed, to have the discussion about what are our common goals and objectives for what we want to see on the watershed, and then to develop a set of actions that we can buy into either collectively or individually to work towards. And then it will serve as a tool, particularly for MVCA, for priority setting, budgeting, forming partnerships, and generally making progress and demonstrating progress on all of these matters. So over the past several, almost 18 months now, we've taken several steps to get to this point. So we shared with the municipalities, including Central Frontenac, a series of backgrounder documents that really spell out the state of the watershed. Then we also worked on goals and objectives. And I think one of the things I want to point out here is that all of these documents went before a public advisory committee that was formed early in the process in the fall of 2019, as well as our policy and priorities committee. And so everything was vetted through that public arena, as well as our standing committees before being released to the public. And then we've engaged with the municipalities, the counties, the various provincial ministries and some of the federal ministries, as well as individual stakeholder groups throughout this process, especially during this past stage where we were developing discussion papers on specific topics that we knew would be of interest to people. And so these are what I refer to as kind of digestible documents, these discussion papers. They were short, they were very topic specific, and we found they were a great tool for engaging people on issues of importance to them. And then similarly, we had very topic specific webinars that were really well attended earlier this year. And we got a lot of good feedback from. So we're at the stage now where your municipality has received the draft plan. We're looking for comments and feedback from you on it. The goal is to present it to our board in July for final approval. So some of the priority areas that you'll see spoken to in the draft plan is the need for collaboration. And this came as a really strong theme throughout, because water is one of those resources that is managed by every level of government, by private sector, public sector, and all of us as individuals as well, because we all have a role in using it and managing it on our property, in the release of it to the environment. And the things that we do on our own individual properties or where we work and play all have an impact on water. And so it really needs good collaboration to manage water well. The second one, key theme, is the need for us to really pay good attention to our infrastructure. And as you may be aware, we updated our 10-year capital plan last year, and we are looking to invest in the order of $10 million over the next 10 years in ensuring that our infrastructure is going to meet the needs of the communities, not just today, but for future. And so on that, the next theme was resilience, and speaking to the extremes of weather that we're experiencing now and that we experienced last year with the flood event, making sure that when we are building new or replacing existing assets, that we're doing so with a view to not just being able to meet historical requirements, but also future requirements, be it impacts of climate change, but also the impacts of growth and intensification within the watershed. And so on that last note, it's working with partners such as yourselves to make sure that all that growth that is planned for in the watershed is smart growth, that we are developing our watershed in a sustainable manner and implementing all those best practices that really help to mitigate the impacts of development on the landscape and in particular the water resources. So we have 33 actions total, and if you look at the plan, you'll see that they're grouped by theme and goal. We identify partners, so you will see yourselves show up as municipalities, as a potential partner on some actions. As well, we've identified particular considerations and options that we need to be considering. So this is just simply an illustration of one of the goals and how they're presented into the draft plan. So each action has a reference code. And then this one is to extend the role of MVCA Public Advisory Committee for the implementation and updating of the watershed plan. Now, this is an interesting one in particular. We found working with the Public Advisory Committee highly effective. Like, this was a terrific group of people we worked with, really took ownership of this project, really provided excellent feedback. They were a tremendous sounding board. And through this process, we said, you know, it'd be nice to have these people have an ongoing role during the implementation of the watershed plan, and to help us get traction on certain things and monitor success and help us to adapt going forward, depending on success and failure of certain actions. So coincidentally, the new regulations that the province is consulting on regarding conservation authorities right now has recommended that conservation authorities have a public advisory type board or committee. And so we're looking at just readjusting that committee to meet that new regulatory requirement. So this is a nice alignment between what we were anticipating and hoping to do under this plan and some of the things coming down through the regulatory network. So, so that's just an example of one action. There are 32 other actions, and what I thought I would do is just highlight some of the ones that I thought would be of particular interest to yourselves as a municipality. So one of the key things that we're looking at is not just ourselves, but working with municipalities and provincial regulators to really put that climate lens on all of our strategic decision making going forward, that we need to be looking at our assets and how they're resilient to the impacts of climate change, as well as when we're making those land use planning decisions, are we asking of landowners and developers to implement measures that will mitigate impacts at the lot level. I already spoke to the PAC. We need to really develop our watershed model. Now, you will recall that last year we reached out to Central Frontenac and asked for your endorsement of 2 applications, well, 3 in fact, to the National Disaster Mitigation Program. And we got one of the grants. So that one grant that we got was to do a risk analysis across the watershed of where the greatest risk of flooding is, and therefore that will help inform which areas we do next in terms of either updating or implementing or conducting studies to prepare new floodplain mapping. So, so that model that I'm speaking of there is the tool we use to do floodplain mapping. Now that model is also dependent upon the LIDAR data that you guys endorsed our application to NDMP for. We did not get that application. However, the county of Lanark and Frontenac, as well as yourselves in North Frontenac and other municipalities, have all committed financially and en masse, everybody pooling their resources together. We're going to be able to do the LIDAR this year. And in fact, we've already signed the contract for that. So that whole partnership initiative, even though the feds decided not to fund it, we're able to proceed with it. So that's a good news story I wanted to share with you. I'm cognizant of time, so I'll zip down through this a bit. A 3-year stewardship program pilot. This was approved by our board last year. And the goal of this program is to really work at the landowner level in cooperation with our municipalities where possible, to look at what people can do on their lots to improve their resilience, and also to look at how they can maybe manage their forests, or if they have small farming lots, etc., or their waterfront, if they want to revegetate, any number of actions to improve their stewardship of their properties. Enhanced response planning and readiness through the low water response team. How topical. So on that, I'll just let you know that the low water response team is meeting tomorrow, and we are likely to go to a level 1 tomorrow. But what this is speaking to is from a water manager's perspective. If we entered a period of prolonged drought, at a certain point, MVCA and the other water operators are going to have to make very hard decisions, quite frankly, about who gets water and who doesn't. And ideally, we have those conversations in advance of the extreme event. And so that's what this is talking about. Just like this pandemic, you know, to the extent that you've had the conversations and you've done the planning ahead of time, eases your ability to respond to the event when it happens. We know that there will be a day when this watershed experiences an extreme prolonged drought. This is speaking to us collectively as all the municipalities in the watershed, and there's 11 of us, to agree on the game plan and to set those kind of priorities on who's going to get water and who's not. And that means that maybe the intake that serves the population of the Carleton Place is given water, but that certain other areas, the watershed, the levels are dropping. So it could mean premature depletion of some of the upstream reservoirs. And then this is just hypothetically speaking, but those are the kind of conversations that bullet is talking about. Supporting municipalities in assessing and enhancing stormwater management in new and existing developments. So to the extent that Central Frontenac has intensification and maybe some rural subdivision development, it's really, this is talking about how can we manage the water coming off those subdivisions to slow the flow and keep it cool. So slowing the flow so that we're not getting that first flush of pollutants, slowing the flow so that in spring freshet, it's mitigating the runoff, and keeping it cool for all the natural habitat reasons, as well from a septic management perspective, making sure that we're building back better where appropriate, and mitigating the impacts of any sort of future septic leakage into the system. We are cognizant in that next bullet regarding the coordination of regulatory tools. We always want to work closely with you guys on the work that you're doing. And that includes things like drain work. We ran into a situation in the next county where the county wanted to do some drain work, and it was actually going to impede flow in an area where we depended on that flow. I like to remind people that all of your drains and your culverts, under roadways, act as much as dams as any dam we have. They constrict flow, and in a flood event, if that flow is sufficiently restricted, you're going to see a buildup in the water level and a potential washout of a road and potential loss of access. So we really want to work closely with all of our municipalities on any of those kind of works that are involving either municipal drains, which are less likely, in Central Frontenac, but definitely your roadside drain system. And then lastly, what I wanted to highlight was the conservation strategy, the land conservation strategy. That's what we called it in the draft plan. Coincidentally, here again, the draft regulation consultation document that the province has published speaks to a similar type of document. I think they call it the land acquisition and disposition strategy that they're asking every CA to produce. And that document is to help conservation authorities and our member municipalities look across the watershed of what land we think needs to be preserved for conservation purposes and a strategy for acquiring and managing it, either ourselves or in partnership with other organizations, and similarly to look at our assets and see what can be disposed of. And I'm sure you're aware that we're in the process of looking to dispose of the KMP, which we feel is no longer in everybody's interest to be held by us. We think it's more appropriate at this stage to go into the hands of the three counties, Renfrew, Lanark, and Frontenac. So those discussions are underway. So that's the kind of nature of what that land conservation strategy is to comprise. So as it pertains to this watershed plan, we're in this public review right now, and we're looking to finalize it next month, that is to go to the board. So we would very much appreciate any comments back from Central Frontenac by June 24th, if possible. If you can't make that exact date, we understand, but it will be going to our board for final approval on the 21st of July. The one last slide I wanted to bring your attention to, I've referenced a couple of times during the presentation, the draft regulations that are out for consideration. The watershed plan as a document is very closely aligned to what this new regulation has referred to as a core watershed-based resource management strategy. Nobody likes the title. It's a real mouthful, but it's got all the marks of being like a watershed plan, but that watershed plan was taken by other regulation and had another meaning. So this is the terminology this regulation is likely to have. The bottom line is the province is looking for us to use this watershed plan as a planning tool. And so we will be taking this watershed plan and adapting it as needed to meet these regulations. And if you have the time and interest, I've noted there the website where you can look at what the province is proposing in terms of our new regulations. So I will stop sharing and stop talking, and happy to answer any of your questions.
Okay. Does anyone have any questions for Sally or comments? Bill? Go ahead.
Yes, to you, Madam Mayor, to Sally. Sally, you keep referring to these public advisory committees. How are the members of the public advisory committees appointed, and how do they differ with the board of directors?
Sure. So the board of directors are appointed by you at council. So they are members, generally members of council, and they are or appointed by council. We do, City of Ottawa and Greater Madawaska have citizen appointees, but still appointed by council. The Public Advisory Committee, we had drafted a terms of reference for it. We identified key sectors of the economy that we wanted to see represented on the PAC, and then we promoted it. We advertised in the paper and we invited people to submit applications. We received, a dozen or more applications, and in partnership with one of our board members, staff reviewed the applications and we made the selection.
Thank you.
Tom, go ahead. You're on mute, Tom.
Sorry
You're
about that.
still
Thank
on
you.
mute.
Oh,
Okay,
I think I'm
there we
okay.
go.
Thank you, Your Worship. Sally, with the gypsy moth infestation we've had over the last couple of years, it's really doing a number on the trees, which eventually will have an impact on the watershed if these trees die off. I'm just wondering, has the Mississippi Valley had any conversation with the MNR or any other government body as to what they can do to help preserve these trees? Because I think over the long haul, it's definitely going to have an impact.
So Jim McCready, who you may know, former MNRF and with the Eastern Ontario Model Forest, but they've recently renamed themselves, so I can't remember the name of his current organization. In any event, he's from the Upper Watershed, and he is on our Public Advisory Committee as it happens, and I get regular updates from him on the gypsy moth. At this point, MVCA has no management plan in place to dealing with it, but that's where I think the stewardship program could help at the individual landowner level, if nothing else, in advising and going out to visit sites and helping people to understand what they're witnessing and potentially in taking mitigation action. So that's a potential, but in straight answer to your question, no, we don't have anything in place today, but I acknowledge your concern.
Anyone else? Okay. Bill, one
Bill.
more?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I just wanted to make a comment. Sally, you still have Phil Sweetman on the board of directors there. I want to caution you that I never did agree with his position that we should have area rating on projects in certain communities. So don't let it happen because I'm not there, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Unfortunately, I missed the essence of what you were, the core part. What did you disagree with him on?
Area rating.
Oh, area rating. Okay,
Yes.
sorry, I just missed that little bit.
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. Phil Sweetman was always taking up the point that if we were doing a water control structure on, say, the Mazenau Lake, that all of the taxpayers, because there's local benefit, should pay a majority of that, until I pointed out that probably most of the cottage owners on Mazenau Lake were residents of the city of Ottawa, so he's actually double whamming them, so.
Very good, thank you.
Okay, if there's no other questions or comments, I have a motion, and it's moved by Bill and seconded by Victor, that council receives a presentation from Sally McIntyre, General Manager for Mississippi Valley Conservation Authority, regarding the draft watershed plan. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor? Motion's carried, and thank you very much, Sally.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good meeting.
Night.
Great. Okay. We are moving on to staff reports now and development services. And Andy is with us. I have a motion moved by Cindy and seconded by Sherry that council receive the construction details report dated May 2021 for information.
Unbelievable.
Very impressive, Andy.
Unbelievable in the numbers, Andy, and how busy you are.
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Yeah, it has been very busy. One of the major projects is Mountain Grove School. They're updating their HVAC system. It's I think it's close to 900,000 for that one, and the majority of the rest is new homes.
Okay. Okay, no other questions or comments? All those in favor of, oh, sorry, Victor, didn't see your hand up. Go ahead.
And then Brent.
Okay.
Yeah. Andy, can you give a little bit of information about you're talking about Land Lake School. They're putting $900,000 into that building? when the school board's been trying to shut it down for years?
Yeah, that's.
I mean, I'm very happy, but I'm just surprised.
Yeah, they're doing the HVAC system and a new roof on the majority of the building.
Go. Go ahead, Brent.
Thank you, Madam
I have
Mayor.
a dog that has to go in and out.
Priorities. This may not be so much a question, Andy, but something that I think all of us should have in the back of our mind. The trend is up. When you look at these numbers, they're very dramatic. Dramatic in a good way, because we're seeing our population grow, and in particular, our permanent population, the people who are going to be here supporting businesses year round and everything. But I do think that there's a trend that a lot of seasonal residents are going to extend their time. It's a function of COVID. It's a function of telecommuting and other things. But when we're looking at this kind of growth, I think that it behooves us to actually have a vision as to how things are going to change. For example, we were, figuring out how long our landfill is going to last. Well, that's based on a particular population, and that's based on a particular demand. So every time we increase our population, increase the number of households, we're increasing the wear and tear on roads, we're increasing the demand on various services, including landfill. And so not putting you on the spot, Andy, but I think in general, all of us should have a conversation about where the increase in demands are going to be and where the increase in expenses for the township are going to be in the years to come, because our population is growing, our demographic is changing, and it's going to have a knock-on effect on everything we do. You can speak to that if you want, Andy, but I think this is something that all of us, council and staff combined, should have on our radar screen.
Yeah, I think you're right, Brent. It's just hard to predict. I know the pandemic has spurred on a lot of development. It's really hard to predict what's going to happen after the pandemic, whether things will slow down or maybe the trend will continue.
Okay. Anyone else have anything to ask or comment on? If not, all those in favor of the motion. Motion's carried. Certainly, by the look of our Committee of Adjustment agendas, we're growing steadily. Okay, next is Development Services as well. I have a motion moved by Tom, seconded by Nikki, that council receive the list of municipal buildings and facilities for information. Questions or comments on that list? It is huge.
Is this, and this is just, I just wanted to just make a note as that, because the Deputy Mayor Gowdy was looking for a list. So Michael got this list out of the, I think it was out of the asset management, was it not, Andy? And him and Terry went through it all as to show which ones that are being used. So hopefully that is helpful, what you were looking for.
Well, and it's something that we as a council need to take a look at. I do remember there was a building in Mountain Grove that we didn't even really know was ours. So yeah, it's important to have this list, and at some point we need to sit down and go over it and discuss each of those facilities.
Absolutely, as to plans, and I think Andy would probably do up a report and as to recommendations, moving forward, because there may be some that are not being used or utilized that for council's radar to decide what they'd like to do with them.
We won't ask Andy to do that until things slow down late in the fall.
Yes.
We do have the building condition assessment coming up, and that will probably identify some issues with some buildings and
And we'll have to
it'll
make
be,
some decisions.
yeah, it'll be valuable information.
Absolutely, and we've got the grant for it. So we did get approved the grant for it. So finally, we'll be able to move forward with that.
Okay, Tom and then Bill?
Maybe this is a good subject to bring up sometime just prior to our 22 budget. We could take a look at all these properties and decide as to whether they're worth hanging on to or what worth upkeeping or making some kind of decision and go over each one of those properties at that time.
Yes. Bill?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. I just didn't follow up. It's almost like Tom's question or comment, but Andy, have we received any further information on the old school in Mountain Grove in regard to our move to unburden it?
I don't think we've made any progress on that yet.
Okay.
We're working on Crow Lake Schoolhouse is the first
Right
one.
now. Mhm.
It's on the list to do.
It is.
Okay.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. And that's it for Andy. Does anyone have any other questions or comments for Andy before we go to Public Works? Seeing none, thank you, Andy.
Thank you,
And
Council.
keep up the good work. It's going to be a busy summer.
Yeah.
All right, Public Works Activity Report. I have a motion moved by Brent, seconded by Sherry, that council receive the Public Works Activity Report as prepared by the Public Works Manager dated June the 8th, 2021 for information. Any discussion? Bill, Tom, Sherry.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to Tyson. I read the activity thing, and I'm just wondering if you give council as a whole an update in regard to Crow Lake Road, what was happening there, because it was all over Facebook that the pavement was failing and all the rest of it. And I have garnered the information, but I think as a whole, council should be aware of what happened there.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I absolutely will give an update to that. I apologize, it wasn't in the activity report. Crow Lake Road is a free trial we've been given by Asphalt Rejuvenation Company. It's called Reclamite is the product, and they've given us a free kilometer as a trial because it's best to hit it when it's brand new asphalt, and they claim that it extends the lifespan of our asphalt by between 5 to 7 years.
Good, thank you.
Okay. Tom.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you, Tyson, I just want to thank you very much for your efforts in getting that Kennebec Lake Bridge painted. The residents up there are most pleased with the outcome. And thank you very much for following through on that and getting that done.
Okay, okay, Sherry.
Thank you through you, Madam Mayor, to Tyson. I think when you answered Bill McDonald's question, that was what my question was going to be. So thank you for clarifying that.
Thanks, Council. Excellent questions. The product we're using there is similar to the product, same as the one on Wagerville Road, and then a sister product of that we're using on Long Lake Road. And it's all for pavement inside of the pavement preservation budget. It's an asphalt rejuvenator. And Tom, I appreciate the comment on the bridge. I can't say that I painted it myself, but we did have a hold up for a little while because the water levels went up over top of the abutment. So once the water level dropped back down, we were able to get guys out there painting it. Thank you, Council.
Thanks, Tyson.
Excellent. Victor.
Yeah, I just
Go ahead, Victor.
Yeah, I want to say thank you to Tyson. The work on the causeway on Long Lake Road there, it used to be that it was just patches. That's all it was patches. Couldn't go through there more than like maybe 10 kilometers per hour. Nowadays, I can scream through there at 100. Thank you.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that is a 50 kilometer per hour zone. The Public Works staff actually patched that ourselves to save some money on paving. And it was in preparation of the asphalt rejuvenator that we're treating that road with. So thank you.
Catch me if you can.
I have a question about what material was used on Shibley Road. Is that part of the rejuvenation program too?
Just gravel. Through you, Madam Mayor, that's just gravel.
And what was it wet with?
Calcium. Yeah, it was graded up nicely and then sprayed with calcium. If you do it right as we're grading, it seems to hold a lot longer.
Okay. No, it looks good.
Getting
It
really
was
nice,
very firm.
getting really nice dark gravel from our contractor. We're really liking this gravel. It tests well too.
Good. Okay. Any other questions or comments on the motion? Seeing no other questions or hands up, all those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. Okay. Next, we have the Fort Erie correspondence. Moved by Victor and seconded by Bill. Whereas on March 23rd, 2021, correspondence was received electronically from the town of Fort Erie requesting supporting motions from respective councils pertaining to Section 6 of Bill 197, COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act 2020. And whereas the Waste and Recycling Committee have reviewed the correspondence at the May 17th, 2021 meeting, and whereas the Waste and Recycling Committee supports Fort Erie's request and is recommending to council that they pass a resolution in support to amend Bill 197, COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act 2020. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council supports Fort Erie's resolution to amend Bill 197, COVID-19 Economic Recovery Act 2020 to eliminate the development approval requirement provisions from adjacent municipalities, and that the host municipality be empowered to render final approval for landfills within their jurisdiction. And further, that this resolution be forwarded to Premier Doug Ford, Jeff Urick, Minister of Environment, Conservation and Parks, Steve Clark, Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, local members of Provincial Parliament, and the Association of Municipalities of Ontario. Any further discussion on the motion? Bill?
Yes, through you, Madam Mayor. I just want to thank the Waste Management Committee for taking this fairly serious, because I felt strongly that we should be supporting this resolution given the long-range ramification if this was pushed through. So I'm certainly going to support this, and I appreciate their research into the issue. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay. Next, we have a motion moved by Cindy and seconded by Tom. Cindy is on the call. Cindy Dickman.
Yes, she is. I see
Yes.
it. Her phone
Yes.
number's
Okay.
on there.
I have given her instructions through the deputy mayor on how she might be able to unmute. I don't know if she's tried it to see if it works yet.
Okay. Okay, so moved by Cindy and seconded by Tom, whereas it's recommended that the K&P trail parking be established on the old Highway 38 roadbed and road allowance near White Lake Road. And whereas it's recommended that the K&P trail parking be considered and completed if possible on county-owned land adjacent to the K&P trail at Godfrey. Therefore, be it resolved that the Township of Central Frontenac support these improvements as outlined in the report. Discussion. I have to say that I talked about this with Ron Vanderwall back, I think the last time we met in person at County Council. Brent and then Tom. Brent,
Thank you,
go ahead.
Madam Mayor. Extremely timely, given the fact that on the weekend, in the report, it talks about problem at Ball Road impeding farm equipment. That happened this Saturday, so very timely. This is a great initiative, and I think it's good. It's going to do wonders both for the trailhead at White Lake and also within Godfrey. I would like to ask a broader question, though. I think that this will solve a lot of problems in Godfrey, but we also have to understand that we have businesses on both sides of 38, and it's a very busy area. I support this. I think it needs to be done, but I think we also need to have a conversation about some traffic calming. And what I mean is speed reduction going through that stretch. You are going to have people crossing 38, and people, the speed limit's 80, people are going much more than that. And I see that we're going to have a potential problem. We have, there's a lot of issues right now with people speeding through that stretch, and there's not a lot of visibility. If you're coming from the south, you're almost on top of the turn to Westport Road. So I think that we might want to have a broader conversation about creating a reduced speed zone in that area to at least acknowledge we're going to have more people there, we're going to have more traffic, and we're going to have more pedestrian traffic across 38 at that.
Tyson, would you like to speak to that?
Hey, Madam Mayor, I think we would get support by the public on that, and I think we would get support by those business owners. My suggestion is let's see if we can go ahead and get approval to make these trail parking improvements and alter the speed after. Does that make sense to everybody? We can start the process now, and I can start reaching out to the businesses and see where we get the support from. But I agree with Brent for sure.
Okay. And Tom, I believe you had your hand up.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just on going along with that line, Tyson, something else I wanted to say too, but there are a number of trails that cross Highway 7 and other major highways like 62 and that, and the speed limits there are 100 kilometers an hour. So, and if you've got good sight lines, I don't really see there'd be much of a problem, but it's something that you have to kind of monitor as you go along. The other question I had was, or other statement I wanted to make was that in both of those areas, do you know how many vehicles you can accommodate at each one comfortably?
Through you, Madam Mayor, it's the counties that the county is doing the study, and Steve Keeley is doing the helping with the engineering for that. So he's looking for our permission to move forward with this in principle before he devotes too much time into this study, or actually pays an engineer to do the parking study or anything like that, or even just the drawings. So we're not at that stage yet. Okay, and we've still got to lay out exact property lines in the field to determine what we own. And like, these are just sketches, and the Frontenac maps, property lines aren't always perfect, right?
Okay, Bill, go ahead.
Yes, to you, Madam Mayor. A couple of comments. Number one, I think that what this will actually help out with is that the opposition to having the ATVs going through the village of Verona, when the only parking area is actually south of the village of Verona. So this is going to have to alleviate that in some respects, because it's not that much further north to access these various parking areas. I appreciate what Councillor Cameron has said, but the issue as I see it is that by not having these parking areas, there are people that are parking along the road, which would probably create a bigger issue than if they were able to get off the road to some respects. But I don't have any opposition to possibly looking at speed signs changing in these various areas. But I know for a fact that people are unloading on both sides of the Highway 38 to access the trail at both of these locations. So accommodating them with a little more parking space, in fact, may end up being a safer environment than what it is right now. Those are just my comments, Madam Mayor. Thank you. I support this.
Good.
Through you, Madam Mayor,
Does anyone else have any comments? Go ahead, Tyson.
I would just like to follow up on actually what Brent and Tom both said. I do agree with the speed reduction. Tom, I agree with reducing the speed in other areas, but I think at this point we do a trial in Godfrey where we actually have businesses, because I think that's where you're going to get more pedestrians trying to cross. I think that what you're talking about, the big highways where you have 100 km/h crossings, I I think as long as you got sight lines, like you said, we're fairly safe on an ATV or snowmobile, but it's the pedestrians that I'm concerned with walking across to Godfrey to get an ice cream cone or to go boat shopping. So I think we should do a reduction for sure.
Okay, very good. All right, I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay. And still with Public Works, we have a motion moved by Sherry and seconded by Brent. Whereas the current downtown revitalization project for Charlotte Lake is continuing its mandate with a completion date of August 2021, and whereas funding is available through COVID-19 response fund that would enable the downtown revitalization project to implement appropriate enhancements to the public amenities available in the village of Charlotte Lake. Now, therefore, be it resolved that council authorize staff to submit a funding application to the Canada Healthy Communities Initiative, June 24th, 2021 intake for a maximum amount of $50,000. And further, that the mayor and CAO clerk be authorized to enter into an agreement with the Community Foundations of Canada should the said application be successful. Any discussions on that? Okay, hearing none. All those in favor? Carried. Okay, do we have anything else for Tyson? Hearing nothing. Yes,
Tom
Bill?
has-
Yeah, I just wanted to pass on some comments, Tyson, to the staff in the Public Works Department. With the work that they're doing this summer, I've probably had more positive comments from the public this summer than I've had in a long time. So I just want you to pass that on from me to you to the workers. I'm very pleased with what's going on.
Appreciate that, Councillor McDonald, and thanks to the rest of the council. We feel a little bit behind right now with the calcium. We're trying our best to catch back up again, and we feel a little bit behind with the grass cutting too, but everybody's doing their best. And I appreciate the support from council. Thank you.
Yeah, it's been a different season too. It started slow and then it became instant 30-degree weather with lots of dust. Okay, thank you, Tyson. Let's move on to the final. Oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say that Tyson might want to stay on just in case there's any questions with the final report. It's out of order because it was added on at the end there regarding the road naming.
I'll be here, Cindy. Okay. I'll be here for the road naming bylaw.
Okay. All right. This is final version of the noise bylaw. Moved by Tom and seconded by Bill. Whereas council provided input on the April 22nd, 2021 version of the proposed noise bylaw as prepared by the CAO clerk, and whereas the CAO clerk has made the necessary amendments. Now, therefore, be it resolved that if council has no further comments or amendments, that they consider passing the respective bylaw later in the meeting. I know, Tom, you've had lots of good comments and Kathy's made those changes. Bill, you've got your hand ready to go?
Yes, I did. I think in our earlier discussions, I suggested under Schedule A, the prohibition by time and place, that we kept referring to different times on Sunday or holidays. My question is, given the ethnic makeup of our community, where our Sunday, and I'm referring to myself, of course, there are a lot of people in our community that don't necessarily look at Sunday as any particularly special day. They may have another one. Should we continue to list Sundays in our schedule as having different times?
That's certainly up to council for discussion.
Now, what does the Sunday pertain to?
It's talking about all the schedule. If you see Schedule A in regards to, detonation of fireworks, all those different things would also, or 9 a.m. on Sundays or holidays, because that means that people can certainly do some of these activities, but can't do it before 7. They have to do it after 9 o'clock in the morning instead of at 7.
through you, Madam Mayor, if I may,
So basically,
the reason I brought it up is because
go
we,
ahead.
as a council, passed a bylaw for Sunday hunting. And
It's
so
not
if
in
you
here.
have people out on the, say, duck hunting out on the lake on a Sunday morning, they're certainly not going to wait till 9 a.m. to start doing some hunting. So what I'm trying to say here is that will we eliminate complaints by people who might be on the lake hearing somebody start shooting at ducks at daylight? So
We did
that's
not-
the reason.
Yeah, we did not, I did not include firearms or hunting at all in this, because I think at the last comments is because we were in a rural area, we should not eliminate certainly with the hunting, and the firearms really comes under the regulation with the criminal code and for our bylaw enforcement officer. So that would be the police to enforce that. So we did not include hunting at all in the noise bylaw.
Right, Kathy, and it's also covered under the Ministry of Natural Resources for times of hunting and during the day.
Correct. Thank you, Tom.
No, I understand that there are hunting rules and when you can actually discharge a firearm is covered under the hunting regulations. I understand that fully, but I raise the question. I have no problem with it staying in, but I raise the question in case it comes up at some other point. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Victor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think a comment that Bill made, he's talking about the ethnic makeup. We are becoming more diverse. Traditionally, Sunday has had this religious connotation for a certain group. But I think perhaps, I agree with Bill that perhaps we should remove the Sunday just so that we're not sending the wrong message, that we are saying this is also a diverse community, that we are not staying with a traditional religious flavor.
Okay, Brent?
Apologies, mouse wasn't working very well. Just a general comment about this, because I know that a lot of people have contacted us and they've made presentations to council. And I think that I'd like to commend everybody for the work that's been done. This is not an easy thing. And I always remind people that bylaws are by their very nature blunt instruments, and that you can't pass a bylaw that takes care of Joe Blow at such and such an address. What you do to one, you do to all. And so we have a noise bylaw that has to take into account every set of circumstances. And I think what Bill and Victor are talking about reflects that as well. This is a guiding document that has to regulate noise for, about 5,000 permanent residents, and then on top of that our seasonal residents. So it's got to be all things to all people, and that's a very difficult thing to do without creating a whole bunch of knock-on effects which have an adverse effect on people. So I'd like to commend everybody for the work, because it's not easy getting it right and delivering something that's going to take care of some very pressing concerns for some people, but do something which is fair across the board for everyone.
But my read of this, are we not just saying that Sunday should be a day of rest and peace? Not that you have to be in church or it's religious or anything, but are we not saying that Sunday of all days of the week should be a quiet day, and a day when you can expect that things will be different by not having these noises and these things that would happen 6 other days of the week?
That was the intent, Madam Mayor. And I think like I made to mention here, it's just that you would put that starting on 9 o'clock in the morning instead of 7. So you're right. I think that was the intent from any of the other bylaws that I certainly had read and did the research on. that seemed to be intent that I took from that as well.
So would council be happy if we change that time from 7 until 9 and still leave Sunday in as being a quiet day? It is a noise bylaw. Bill, you had your hand up.
Yes, yes. Well, that's really what it's saying, Madam Mayor, is it's saying leave in, I suppose you could just take the word Sunday out and the seventh day of the week or whatever, the first day of the week or whatever you want to call it, recognizing that people want to sleep in. Because to me, from my upbringing, Sunday was a religious day. And that's really where I'm coming from. And there are lots of people in our community that I'm sure that do not look at Sunday as being a religious day. But if you want to leave it in there, I have no problem with that either. I bring it up just as a point of discussion. And I would suggest that we do it and then wait to see if we get any response.
I agree.
Okay, so we did agree though to change the time by a couple of hours. Victor, go ahead.
Yeah, and I'm with Bill on this one. This is something that I find it's not a deal breaker. It's just a point of discussion. Are we showing our historical biases?
Only our rest days. Maybe it's just to cure a hangover. Who knows? Okay.
So, Madam Mayor, as
Yes.
somebody who works shifts, Sunday is often not a rest day for me. So, but usually I have Wednesdays off. So could we put Wednesday in there as well?
No.
I'm glad you appreciate that was just a humorous comment.
Yeah.
But you would be fine with leaving it in. If in fact we get complaints, we'll take a look at changing it. I think it's important we get this bylaw in place.
I agree.
Okay. Any other comments or changes? If not, all those in favor of the bylaw? Carried. That was a lot of work for Kathy. Yes, a lot of work for Kathy, but job well done.
Well, thank you, and thanks to Councillor Dewey for his comments. So well noted, and everyone else's as well. So lots of research, but we're there. So that's great.
Good. Okay, revised road naming bylaw policy, moved by Nikki and seconded by Cindy. Whereas our existing road naming bylaw 2011-22 is outdated and requires updating to reflect current requirements and realities of the road naming process. And whereas civic addressing is now within the purview of the Public Works Department, now therefore be it resolved that council review the draft private road naming bylaw and provide feedback to staff. And further, that staff bring back a final version of the bylaw incorporating these comments for adoption at the July 13th meeting. So we'll have some time to review it and make comments. Any discussion? Victor?
Yeah, this is a question.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A question for Tyson. In the background, point 3, it was simplify the process in the event name is challenged by a resident on the road. Is that a resident or a property owner? And I think this is an important distinction. We have an example of it right now going on with Williams Lane. There was a property owner who wanted to challenge that name. And I'm just wondering whether or not we want to have somebody who just owns property abutting a private lane being able to challenge it if they're not living there. And that's just a comment about how are we going to define this challenge process.
Madam Mayor, I agree with Victor, and Cindy will know possibly if there's any legalities stopping us from mentioning property owner and or resident. I think that, or I guess property owner would cover it all. So I agree, Victor, because you could own the property at this point and be looking to develop in the future, and you would want to say in the road name. So I agree.
Good point.
May I jump in there for a moment?
Okay.
Just so
Sure, go ahead, Cindy.
So the way it's drafted right now, taking into consideration the issues that we've had over the last couple of years, right now it's clarified in the policy that only those with existing civic addresses would have the opportunity, plus the owner who owns the fee simple ownership in the road would be the ones who would have basically the appeal rights. Not just anyone who has frontage on the road. So if they own property but don't have civic addresses on the road, then they're not notified. So if that's something that council wants to change, that's certainly something we can change in the bylaw. But that was one of the main changes we did make to try to clear up the confusion that has happened in past applications.
Okay, Victor?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. And actually, I agree with the way it is stated now. I don't think that being a property owner, just simple property owner, should give you the right to challenge a road name. You don't have skin in the game. I think it should be reserved for people who have civic numbers on any potential private lane. They should be the only ones who are allowed to challenge a name change.
So through you, Madam Mayor, the only thing I see with that is that you can have a civic address without owning a residence. And I kind of, Cindy, maybe I'll answer this better, but I kind of think of the family that's maybe owned the property around the whole 1,000 acres down the whole lane, and then someone with a small residence of 1 acre. I think when it comes to skin in the game, that's kind of who I see that a property owner should definitely have. This property owner who may have a civic address to his woodlot or something like that with an approved entrance, I think they should definitely have say in that road name.
Okay, Tom, you had your hand up?
Yes, I did. I kind of agree with that because I think the intent is down the road is to have all properties with a 911 address, and that includes even islands as we go forward. So I think that I'm kind of in between here on this, but I think that if it has a civic address or has a number, I think that property owner should have a say in it.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I would just like to thank Cindy. Sorry, Madam Mayor, you didn't get my video on in time. I would just like to thank Cindy for all her hard work on this. I would just like to thank Cindy for all her hard work on this. It's been a long haul trying to get all these bylaws updated ever since we made the switch to Public Works, and she's been doing an excellent job, so thank you.
Good. One more thing off your plate, Cindy. All those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. We're slowly getting these things cleaned up. All right, moving on. This is a delegation of Lori and Jerry White, and I believe they're on with us.
Mayor Smith,
And this is about the.
Sorry, I just moved over the phone number I believe that Mr. White is going to be talking from. Can you unmute yourself and see if it's working? I'm going to move over the video as well. Mr. White, if you can try the *6 to unmute your phone.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
We can hear you.
Okay.
Yes.
Perfect.
Welcome, Jerry. And this is about short-term rentals. So you take it away.
Yeah, first of all, I would like to thank the Township for giving me this opportunity this afternoon to address council. My wife and I would also like to thank the mayor, the councilors, and any other participants for taking the time to review our letter we submitted last week. We've been dealing with the effects of short-term rentals for approximately 4 years now and finally decided to express our concerns to council. We feel that a home is a place that you are supposed to feel at peace and part of a community, but with short-term rentals in our neighborhood, we can honestly say that has not been the case. Individuals make the argument that owning a second property is not affordable without the income from renting. But why should an individual's ability to afford a cottage be allowed to affect their neighbors' enjoyment of their properties? Cottage ownership is a want, not a necessity, so it seems unreasonable that this argument should be used to justify allowing ghost hotels when they have so many negative effects. We've also read on a number of websites that short-term rentals increase tourism, and this may be true in areas where there is nothing else to do but to get out of the home and explore. However, it is our experience that renters arrive with their cars packed to the roof with everything they need for the week and have no intention of taking the time to grocery shop or explore. Renters are paying for the lake experience and seldom leave the property to do other activities that would be of economic benefit to local businesses. Because we live beside 3 of these operations, we can attest there are no positive effects for neighbors with respect to short-term rentals. The letter we submitted only outlined a few of our negative experiences with these ghost hotels, but we have also had incidents where renters have tried to take our personal property. We've had strangers at our door asking to borrow things that are not available at their rental unit. We have witnessed the adjacent rental units having more than twice the number of guests advertised, which has resulted in a party-like atmosphere and made us feel unsafe. We discussed how renting to strangers over the internet making us feel unsafe to the owners, and their response was that it was their property and they could do what they wanted. Because of our concerns for our safety, we've installed a security system and no longer leave any doors unlocked. There is also the fact that we do not know who our neighbors are going to be from week to week, so we're uneasy about inviting guests just in case it's one of those bad weeks that we would not want our friends or family to endure. Unfortunately for us, the possibility of it being a bad week is multiplied by 3. Rental units being allowed to operate over capacity also puts a significant strain on the septic system and increases water usage, which over time can affect the ecology of the lake. There also is a significant liability issue associated with allowing strangers to use the private road to access the properties that falls on the shoulders of all residents sharing the laneway, not just the rental property, which have no control over it. Let us first say, given the choice, we'd love to see a bylaw prohibiting short-term cottage rentals as they've done in Seguin Township, or not allow short-term rentals in residential areas as they've done in Wasaga Beach. We think if council contacts these 2 jurisdictions, they will find out these decisions have not affected tourism, nor does it affect real estate prices or saleability. It only protects their communities from the negative sociological and environmental effects of these operations. If the township feels that prohibiting or restricting short-term rentals is not possible, there are a lot of resources available online from townships currently bringing in regulations like Tiny and Lake Bay townships, as well as townships with regulations already in place like the town of Blue Mountain or Niagara-on-the-Lake. We put a lot of thought into the recommendations we were making in our letter to try to address our major concerns while taking into consideration our neighbors' choices. We were also trying to keep it simple because we realized if recommendations became too complex, implementing them would be too consuming and costly. There are a myriad of bylaws for short-term rentals regarding zoning, inspections, and licensing, but we feel that the bylaw recommendations we made regarding noise and nuisance activities 24 hours a day and property management are essential for short-term rentals if the goal of the township is to mitigate the negative effects associated with short-term rentals in their neighborhoods. When the property owners are using their cottage, they are respectful as we are to them, and there are no problems. It's only when guests are unsupervised the problem arises. As we described in our letter, contacting the owner of the short-term rental when there is a problem is useless if they live a distance away from their rental unit. It will not come to deal with the renters in person. This is why we feel property management located within the township is a must. Neighbors are not profiting from the short-term rental, so why should it fall on their shoulders to police the activities of renters or act as the front desk for their ghost hotels? It also seems unfair that in order for neighbors to deal with the unruly renters, they have to put their own safety at risk while the people profiting from the operation remain out of harm's way and retain their anonymity. As we indicated in our letter, requiring property management to be located within the township to provide an opportunity for economic growth through the establishment of property management companies. Requiring property management would also level the playing field between these ghost hotels and commercial accommodation providers who already are required to provide administration, maintenance, and security services to their guests and community. We recommend that it also be a requirement of the bylaw to at least include a septic inspection to ensure the advertised capacity for the rental unit aligns with the capacity of the septic system. The property management company should be required to monitor the property throughout the rental period, as would be done at a resort, to assure the capacity is not exceeded and the expectations of the renter's behavior are being met by communicating with neighbors. This would be taking a proactive approach to dealing with any potential issues instead of waiting for something bad to happen and then reacting. This would also make renters aware they are being monitored like they would be at a hotel, which would influence their behavior. There are a long list of recommendations and guidelines listed on the FOCA website and responsible renting articles that have been put in our Lake Association's newsletter. Websites used to book these rentals even have recommendations for hosts to follow to try to avoid problems with their community before they start renting their units. However, recommendations and guidelines don't work from our experience, as individuals operating these places feel it's their right to do as they please and they're not accountable to anyone for the effects of their operations. We are sure this may not always be the case, but because of a few bad apples, bylaws are necessary because some people will not consider other people's right to enjoy their properties unless it hurts them financially or becomes a legal matter. This has become even more apparent during the pandemic as these same individuals have been disregarding stay-at-home orders and continue to travel to their cottages and entertain guests. Residential areas are designated as such because they are locations where people live, not places for people to operate unsupervised vacation rentals. For this reason, it would be unfair to allow the operation of short-term rentals in residential areas to have any effect on the people living there. If council feels that it is still the property owner's right to run these types of businesses from their properties without regulation, even though they are highly disruptive, then might we ask, would it not also be our right to prevent our neighbors from enjoying their property when they are here if we cannot enjoy our home because of renters when they are not? As we indicated in our letter, this is not the approach we prefer to take, and we would prefer council to be proactive in addressing the problems between neighbors caused by the short-term rentals. Once again, we would like to thank you for your time, but we'd like to leave you with a couple of questions to think about while you review the township's options for dealing with this issue. First of all, how would you feel if your neighbor started a short-term rental, or as in our case, 3 beside your primary residence? Secondly, just because you don't have a short-term rental next door currently, you may have one sometime in the future. Would you not want bylaws in place to protect your interests just in case it does happen? And that's the end of I was kind of just going over some of the points that we put in the letter, and I wanted to kind of expand on them. I really appreciate you getting back to me so quickly regarding the letter. It took less than a week. I was quite surprised. So if you have any questions, I'll take them now.
Thank you, Jerry. And I want to thank you for giving us information about where we can go to find some examples of what controls are in place now, and for your very informative presentation. Council, does anyone have a question or comment? Certainly, this is part of our growing economy in quiet, rural Central Frontenac that isn't so quiet anymore.
Yeah. Madam Mayor, Victor had his hand up.
Victor, go ahead. And then Tom.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Victor and then Tom.
I just want to thank Jerry for his presentation. I have to agree with him. I live on a huge property. I don't have any problems with short-term rentals, but I know that it is an issue. I have done a little bit of reading on this, and I know that Airbnb and I think Vrbo as well, if a township or a municipal authority contacts them, beyond just the idea of getting a list of properties which we can then force to register themselves with the township, we can also collect an accommodation tax. And I think they have that in Toronto as well, where all of the accommodation providers have to pay, and I think it's something up to 3%. And then that money goes into some kind of a tourist promotion fund so that the area can provide advertising to to promote tourism. Mm-hmm. And then there's also once we have the owners registered, we can hold them accountable for the actions of their tenants or their short-term tenants. So I support moving forward. Let's get some information. Let's review some other bylaws, and let's get something in place to protect our residents from this sort of a problem. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay, Tom, go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. Jerry, I want to thank you and Lori for bringing this to council's attention. In the ward that I represent, I've had 3 lake associations complaining about this. So the urban culture has suddenly moved into the rural area of Central Frontenac. And I think it's timely that we staff take a look at this and see what we need to do to control it. Because I've had complaints about people leaving garbage after a weekend, and I have to agree with you. I can name some places where a house that normally would accommodate 4 or 5 people, they'll end up having 15 to 18 people on a weekend. And also during the wintertime, they use on the ice fishing. They take their garbage out on the ice, they leave it, they don't take it home. So I think it's timely, and I would like to see staff take a look at this thing, and then maybe we get together and bring some kind of regulation back. Anyway, that's all I had to say, Your Worship. Thank you, Jerry, again.
Okay,
Bill,
thank you. Anyone else?
Bill, Councillor McDonald, Mayor.
Bill, go ahead.
No, I just thought the mayor
Go
was
ahead.
turning me off because I was asking too many questions, but that's okay. I want to say thank you to Jerry for bringing this issue forward, because I have to admit that I wasn't, aware of this issue. So it was kind of enlightening. But I think the biggest threat to most of these homeowners that are actually doing this has to be the impact of having unlimited number of people in their homes on their septic system. So if they're doing it to raise funds to help support the building, I would suggest to them they should reevaluate that, because if in actual fact the septic system fails because of overuse, the cost will far outreach any profits that they might be making doing this. So I'm prepared to have staff look at this and move forward. So thank you, Madam Mayor.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I can certainly.
Is there anyone else?
Yeah. Madam Mayor, in regards to this the short-term rentals, when you're talking about it, and certainly we as staff, yes, we can certainly look into this. And I know that when I was on the OCA conference, the virtual conference today, our own lawyer, Tony Fleming, when they were talking about non-complying and non-conforming uses for properties, short-term rentals was discussed. So he will have some of the information, and I'll have some of that from that, certainly from that presentation. So of the legalities with that as well. So, I mean, we do have some avenues certainly to go looking, and certainly some of these people in some of these other municipalities, I may know individuals that I can get some information for sure.
Well, I'd like to, can you hear me? No.
Yeah.
Oh,
yes,
sorry, I'm back on. I just seen my name come up.
Go ahead.
Anyways, I appreciate everybody's comments. I'm glad that you show interest in trying to address this matter. I would appreciate it though if you could keep us updated as things progress, because sometimes it's hard to get access to what's going on. Because like I said, we've been dealing with this for a very long time, and we're almost at our end as far as I'm concerned, as far as how much more we want to deal with it.
Okay, now it will take some time, Jerry, but I'm going to read you the motion of action that we want to take tonight. And it's moved by Victor and seconded by Tom, that council receives a presentation from Lori and Jerry White regarding short-term rentals for information. And further, that council directs staff to research short-term rental licensing and/or enforcement options and bring back a report to council. So this is similar to our noise bylaw. Council will ask staff to research it. We'll put together what that looks like and what a bylaw could look like, and then go forward to pass that and then get it enforced. It's not going to help you for this summer, because it will take us probably a few months to get this done, but that is the direction if council approves this motion. So I'm going to ask, is there any more comments on the motion? If not, a show of hands, all those in favor of the motion. The motion's carried. So that is the action that we will take. And again, thank you for bringing this to our attention, and we'll try to keep you in the loop as we go forward, but always don't hesitate to go to our website, and you can read the minutes of all of the meetings that we have. And as this information keeps coming back to council, that information will be on the website, or you can join our council meetings the second and fourth Tuesdays of every month, except August. It's only once a month. July and August is once a month.
And Madam
Okay,
Mayor,
and thanks again, Jerry and Lori.
and he can also send us an email as well.
Oh, yeah.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you. All right, we are at correspondence. Moved by Bill and seconded by Sherry that council receive for information the following correspondence, and it's number 1 to 10. Discussion? All those in favor? Motion's carried. Okay, we are at delegations, correspondence.
Like meetings.
Correspondence requiring action. Moved by Brent and seconded by Victor that council received a request from Lori Snyder for permission to place one of Mark's buddy benches at the Charlotte Lake Park. And further, is that Charlotte Lake Beach?
It's supposed to be the beach and park, yes.
Okay, I'm just going to add beach so there's no confusion. Park Beach. And further, that council confirms its support for Baseball for Dad's cause of mental health and suicide awareness, and approves to the placement of the buddy bench at the Charlotte Lake Park Beach at a location approved by staff. Any questions or comments? It's a very nice idea. Okay, Victor?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Go ahead.
I'm sure that I'm going to be in agreement with this, but what is a Mark's bench?
I think it was named, did you? I don't have the actual stuff right in front of me at the moment. There was an email with literature from it, and I think it was a campaign for this Lori Snyder's, I think, son had committed suicide in regards to this and making it awareness. And I know Brooke Hawley, who is the executive, CAO's executive up in North Frontenac Township. She is one of these people that was CC'd on all this. So I can certainly find out further information, but it sounds like they're going around to different areas to present this to municipalities and see if there's any support for it, and to put these benches, and they already supply the bench and everything.
Okay, now, was that correspondence sent to councillors as well? I don't remember seeing anything about it.
Should have been in the package, was it not, Cindy?
So I just checked, and the cover
there's-
email was included, but I see that the actual picture of the bench was not, so that was somehow missed. If you give me a few minutes, I'll bring up that document and I can share the screen and show you.
For sure, that way then you would know what
Okay.
it looks like. Mhm.
And this is just for my own curiosity. I think it's a fine idea.
Well, I think we can go ahead and vote on it and take a look at the bench after we've approved it. I'm sure that it will be something that's quite acceptable to us.
And I think Councillor
And
Wan,
everyone loves the bench.
sorry, Madam Mayor, I think Councillor Wan was maybe circulated on this as well. Okay.
Okay, Sherry? Oh, you're on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I'm okay. I have no comment.
I have the document up, so just
Okay.
bear with me here. I
All
will
right.
share it.
Okay.
Oh, I'm not, okay. Sorry, my screen's doing really weird things.
Yeah, we can see it, Cindy. It's on.
Okay, you can, okay, because it disappeared from my
Oh, yeah.
screen altogether.
And this is where they were talking about
That's
in
okay, we've
regards
got
to, yeah, so they, in the last 11 months, they placed 14 benches, and there's currently 10 on order for this summer. And so it sounds like it's received a lot of certainly support in other communities.
Okay. All right. Now we can ask the question. All those in favor of the motion? Motion's carried. I think my internet's not stable right now because you guys are all like statues when you vote.
Fabulous.
Okay, we are at public meetings. There's no public meetings?
No.
Bylaws. I have a motion moved by Nikki and seconded by Tom that bylaw 2021-39 being a bylaw to regulate and control noise be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed this 8th day of June 2021. Discussion? All those in favor? Carried. So tell me this, Kathy.
Yes.
There are a couple of existing problems. People should contact the office with
Yes.
generators running and put their complaint in?
Correct, and then we will have bylaw enforcement go out.
Oh, okay. Okay, I think we all need to know that information because being new, I think we will get some calls for those
sure.
problem areas.
Yes, and Madam Mayor, I usually have Donna do that, so she will contact Leanne directly. So yes, if you have any comments and, you know, any complaints, certainly come through and send us an email.
Okay. All right, is there any notice of motions?
No,
Is there any giving of notice of motions?
no.
New or other business?
Yes, there is.
I have Frontenac Community Arena. I have a motion moved by Sherry and seconded by Brent that council receives the media release from the Frontenac Community Arena regarding ICIP funding for information. As Brent and Sherry smile, and we all smile. Any further discussion or comment on that?
I just wanted to
ahead,
shout
Brent.
out to Sherry because I get a chance to talk a lot about the arena, but Sherry's she's done 2 terms as arena board chair, and she is very active and engaged and a great partner on the arena board. Sherry will never say it herself, so it has to be said.
Well, thank you very much, Brent. And Brent's excellent as well. And I think we're all so excited about this opportunity. So thank you, Brent.
Excellent, yes. Okay, all those in favor? Carried. I was on the presentation and thanked the provincial and federal government for the dollars and told them that without their dollars, we would have been in a financial disaster and have to borrow money or raid reserves. So it was very good we got that. Okay, there's no closed session.
No.
Is there anything else to come before council?
Nothing.
Nothing to come. I have a motion then. Moved by Bill and seconded by Tom that bylaw 2021-40, being a bylaw to confirm the regular meeting of council held on June 8th, 2021, be read a first, second, and third time, and finally passed this 8th day of June 2021. And further that this meeting be adjourned until 4 p.m. on June 22nd, 2021, said meeting to be held virtually. And adjournment at 5:38 if you are all in favor of this motion. Motion's carried, 5:38.
Madam Mayor, is there any opportunity or chance that by that time we might be able to meet in person or the July meeting? What's your